Thanks for joining. Welcome to the first Loft Talk session of 2026. Today, I'm going to be unpacking the new rules of organic visibility to explore where SEO content is heading in 2026. Now, this is about what's already changed, what's no longer working, and what businesses need to adapt right now if they want to stay visible over the next few years. But before we get into all of that, let me introduce myself if you don't know me already. I'm Ellie. I'm the content lead at Digital Loft. I oversee the content function here at the agency, ensuring that we're continuously leveling up all of the quality of the work that we produce as a team, while staying ahead of trends, user behaviours, algorithms, and channels of discovery. And that means that my day-to-day sits right at the intersection of strategy, of execution, and of experimentation. Particularly around how content actually performs in real search environments. I have around 9 years, give or take, of content marketing experience gained both in-house and agency side, where I am now. And I've worked through multiple algorithm shifts, platform changes, and the dreaded SEO is dead moments. But if I'm being honest, the last 12 months have felt fundamentally different to anything before. The landscape we're in, it's unsettled. It's changing faster than we ever thought possible. And while this is intimidating, while it's scary, it also creates a real huge opportunity for innovation, for experimentation, and for shaking up the status quo. Now, throughout 2025, a big part of my work was understanding how organic visibility was changing in practice, not just in Google rankings, but in how brands surface their content in AI overviews, in LLMs, in editorial coverage, across social media channels, and in other kind of non-traditional spaces as well. And what my team and I have seen is that the long-standing playbook, more content, more keywords, more pages, it's no longer enough. In fact, in a lot of cases, this mindset is actively holding brands back from winning. And really, that's why we're holding this session, to share what's changing, what I've learned from facing the industry's challenges head on over the last year, and how you need to adapt your brand's approach to content as a driver of organic growth as we head further into 2026. Because for me, 2026 is going to be something of a breakpoint year. Search has changed more in the last 12 months than in the last 12 years combined. And that's not a hyperbole. We're not talking about incremental ranking factor tweaks. We're talking about changes to how information is actually retrieved, interpreted, and delivered to users on the web. And that means that visibility is no longer about just where you rank. It's about whether your content is selected, extracted, and trusted by machines. Because AI and social search have created entirely new paradigms for organic discovery. Google's no longer the single front door to the internet. Discovery happens across platforms, interfaces, in different formats, and many of these don't look or behave like traditional search results at all. It means that organic discovery organic search is fragmented, it's conversational, and increasingly it's mediated by machines that summarize, extract, and decide what gets surfaced. And here's the critical part, because most brands are still playing by these old rules. They're still optimizing for blue links. They're still measuring success by rankings, and they're still producing content designed for queries, not conversations. They're still treating SEO, PR, UX content as separate, detached disciplines. And this gap between how visibility actually works and how brands are operating is where this visibility is being lost. So when we say that brands need a new playbook, we don't mean small tweaks or tactical fixes. We, as an industry, as professionals, we need to face up to a genuinely different way of thinking about what content is for, how it gets surfaced, and how it earns visibility. So here's how this afternoon session is going to work. First, we're going to look at the big shift that's happening and all that's kind of already happened in SEO content, particularly around information retrieval and answer generation. Then we'll talk about the new rules for crafting content that actually impact things in this environment, what matters now and what really doesn't anymore. From there, I'll walk you through the key content trends that I expect to define 2026, not as abstract ideas, but as practical patterns that we're going to start seeing everywhere as the year progresses. Importantly, we'll also look at how this translates into content roadmaps, because trends are meaningless if they don't turn into decisions, priorities, and actual execution. And finally, I'll leave some time for questions at the end. We're going to cover a lot of ground. So if you want to take notes and come back to anything when we finish, please feel free to do so. You can also leave questions in the Q&A section somewhere linked below in a button. But before we talk tactics or trends, we need to zoom out a bit, because the biggest shift affecting SEO content right now isn't an algorithm update. It's a fundamental change in how information is retrieved and how answers are generated for users. Now, historically, search engines return documents on the web. Now what we're seeing is systems retrieving and extracting information and then generating answers, so synthesizing content, summarizing viewpoints, and deciding which sources, brands, facts to surface. And all of this often happens without the user even needing to visit a web page. And that's scaring a lot of brands, rightly so. For a long time, organic visibility essentially meant Google search. You optimize pages, you earn clicks, and that really was the game. Yes, there are nuances. Yes, challenges, goalpost changes, core updates, etc. But it was comparatively one-dimensional to what we have now, because that model operated on and kind of assumed a single dominant discovery channel. Yes, Google is still by far the biggest search engine, but there are other emerging players vying for a piece of the pie. So what we're seeing here on screen is a fragmentation to a set of interrelated discovery channels, large language models like ChatGPT, AI overviews in AI mode within Google itself, social platforms, editorial media, forums. These all sit alongside and within traditional search, not beneath it. These channels are siblings almost. They're not hierarchies. Users move between them fluidly, often without thinking about which platform they're using at any given moment. So a question might start in an LLM. It might be validated through a social thread, forum, or a video. And only then might it end up in a Google search for the pivotal action. Sometimes it never even reaches a traditional SERP at all. So from a brand perspective, this means that organic visibility can't be owned in just one place. Being good at SEO and crafting high quality, impactful content in the traditional sense is no longer enough if your brand isn't discoverable, understandable, and trusted across this wider ecosystem that we can see. This fragmentation has gone hand in hand with another major shift. Search is no longer a one-off query, it's a conversation. The old model assumed users searched, clicked, consumed, and left, and that's just not how people behave anymore. A search like the best laptop for work used to be the whole, or at least most of the journey, and now that's really just the starting point. Users immediately expect clarification, comparison, and refinement, often without ever retyping from scratch. Thanks to kind of the inherent experience designed by interactive conversational AI tools that we're all using more and more. So from this, what is the best laptop for work? The next question might be contextual. So I travel a lot for work. Will this laptop suit me? And that context matters far more than the initial keyword phrasing ever did. Then comes things like refinement. So what about the battery life? Will it last for 10 or more hours? And I travel on trains without charging ports. Should I choose this model of laptop, or would another one suit me better? This is a chain of intent, and modern search systems are designed to support it, but most content strategies still aren't. This brings us to the lovely, much loved AI overviews. Now, whether you like them or not, they fundamentally reshaped what visibility looks like. It's no longer just about ranking. It's about being selected, summarized, and cited consistently across emerging generative search spaces. Now, search experiences are now faster, they're more interactive, and they're increasingly personalized. Users can get information, they can get answers immediately, they can refine them instantly, and then move on, often without clicking through multiple separate detached results. And yes, this has real consequences. We all know that. AI overviews can reduce organic click-through rates by up to 61%, depending on query type and intent. But that doesn't mean SEO is dead. What it means is that traffic alone is no longer the right success metric. But the flip side of this is just as important, because even though AI overviews do reduce click-through rate, we know this to be fact, pages that are cited within AI overviews can see up to 35% more traffic than those that aren't cited. So the difference is no longer position 1 versus position 3, it's being referenced versus being invisible. And this is where things like media coverage enter the picture. because in an age of AI search, media coverage suddenly takes on a much more important role in SEO strategies and organic growth schemes. So yes, links and mentions have always played a big part in strengthening EEAT profiles, but search engines and AI systems increasingly prioritize information that they can actually verify. That means third-party signals, not just what you say about yourself, your own brand, are more important. So mentions in the press, expert commentary, coverage on relevant, authoritative sites all act as these trust signals. And these signals help AI systems decide what and who to trust. Now, this isn't about kind of random, untargeted PR or outreach. It's about real, clear entity building. So reinforcing who you are as a brand, what you offer, and what you should be known for, and doing this consistently across multiple sources and spaces. Because when those signals align, it creates the visibility flywheel that we can see here, because strong entities lead to trust. Trust leads to citations, and citations reinforce this visibility across search, across AI, and in media ecosystems. And that's how brands earn this inclusion, not just in the SERPs, but in AI overviews, LLM responses, and editorial recommendations. Because visibility is now cumulative and cross-channel. It's not a page-by-page beast anymore. And when we zoom out and look at all of these changes together, we're pushed to face up to an uncomfortable but unavoidable truth. Now, brands are losing visibility because their SEO and content strategies were really built for a version of search that no longer exists. We still see a heavy reliance on volume, producing more pages, more blog posts, and targeting more keywords, without a real clear understanding of whether that content actually delivers value, clarity, or authority. We see pages that technically answer a query, but that don't support real user journeys, kind of satisfy follow-up questions, or aid decision-making. We see content that lacks clear entity definition, making it difficult for search engines and AI system to understand A, who the brand is, B, what it stands for, and C, where it fits within a bigger picture. We see articles, blog posts, resources that are written to be read, consumed linearly, not to be scanned, extracted, or reused across different surfaces. And we see kind of PR media activity happening in isolation, disconnected from broader SEO strategies, content planning, and kind of the search moments where visibility actually matters to a brand. The result of this is a lot of effort, a lot of content, and often diminishing returns, while competitors who do things right make gains. So the real question from this becomes, what does this actually mean for SEO content in 2026? And more importantly, how do we adapt to the new reality without burning everything we've built in the process? Let's look at some shifts. So the first shift is quite simple to say, but it's harder to kind of make happen in practice. It's harder to operationalize. And that is that value is in and volume is out. Now, old models rewarded output, more pages, more keywords, more theoretical chances to rank, but AI has completely flattened that advantage. High output, hope it sticks content with no clear direction doesn't just underperform, it actively dilutes brand clarity, because when everything exists, nothing stands out. It's kind of like, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. What does work, though, is considered, authoritative, well-structured content that all offers real value. So fewer, higher quality assets created with genuine thought, and that are engineered to satisfy clear intent. Assets that are designed to be useful from the ground up, not just indexable. The second major shift linking to this is a move from keyword-first thinking to entity-first thinking, the entities that we touched on just earlier. So if keywords describe language, entities describe meaning. An entity can be a brand, a product, a service, a concept, a place, anything with a clear, definable identity. And entities matter because they're how machines, they're how LLMs understand concepts, and crucially, how these concepts relate to one another. Entities help systems answer questions like, what is this? How does it kind of interact with other things? And is it trustworthy? Is it credible? When we build clear entities, we have entity clarity, and this determines whether content is selected, trusted, and reused by AIs, the kind of the goal that we're all striving towards. Now, this doesn't mean that keywords stop mattering, not at all. They still tell us how users search, but they stop being almost the organizing principle behind the strategy. Instead, SEO becomes a game of crafting content that defines concepts properly, explains the relationships between them clearly, and reinforces the same entities across multiple touch points. And when these entity signals are strong, visibility scales, not just in Google, but across AI tools, media, and social platforms as well. The third shift I want to talk about is conversational content. Now, AI interfaces have truly changed how people ask questions. And more importantly, they've changed how individuals think through decisions in real time when browsing online. Users now expect more they expect more of a continuous flow. They expect to explore, refine, validate, and compare all in one movement. And that means that true intent doesn't always live in the first query anymore. It emerges through the follow-up questions asked. It means that brand and user interactions are now more dynamic. They need to be more fluid. People ask, they refine, and they qualify, often jumping back and forth between these stages at lightning speed. And only then, once they've done this, do they choose? Do they make a decision? So instead of being designed to answer one isolated query, content needs to be designed to anticipate almost what comes next and to support progression towards understanding or decision making. Now, it doesn't mean that every page needs to answer every single question under the sun. It means that content needs to be structured so that users and LLMs can move naturally from one question to the next without friction. And when content is built in this way, it performs better across traditional search, in AI overviews, and other generative interfaces because it's mirroring how people actually think. Another consequence of this shift is an evolution of expectation. Personalization is no longer a nice to have, an add-on. It's assumed. It's almost expected, because AI has kind of subconsciously trained users to expect search experience that feel tailored, relevant, and specific to them in their unique position. Not just based on what they've asked, but on the context that they've shared around that query, around the constraints that they've mentioned, and what they're likely to care about next based on all of this. And that expectation doesn't switch off when a user lands on a website. They've had that interaction where when using or when kind of searching for something in AI or in search, and they expect that to continue. And we know this to be true because research shows, research from Adobe, from Gartner, from McKinsey, places like this, show that 73% of consumers would rather do business with brands that offer personalization. They'd rather do business with brands, service providers, stores that offer this acute relevance, clarity, and audience awareness that feels much more valuable to consumers of today. But at the same time, kind of in conflict to this, nearly 2/3 of marketers struggle to execute personalization. It's tricky. But this is why kind of crystal clear ICPs, audience mapping, intent clarity, it all matters more than ever, because without these assets at the foundation of content strategies, brands fail to resonate with the new expectations of their target markets. Now, a lot about what we've spoken about so far has kind of had underlying connections to experience, how users interact with and experience content, and how the expectations thereof have shifted really dramatically. So we're now at a point where on-page UX, user experience, and SEO are inseparable. Content has to be designed around the audience first, not the CMS, not the template, not a keyword list. It has to be audience-centric. And that's because both users and AIs are trying to do the same thing at the core. They're trying to reduce effort. AI interfaces, by design, lower cognitive load. If we compare an AI overview with a traditional search result, they've kind of the AI overview has synthesized information, it's surfaced the most relevant points and removed unnecessary friction from the user. It's done the manual lifting for the individual. And what it does is it changes the baseline expectation. So when users click through to a website, they now expect the page to continue that experience, not undo it. If web content feels dense, overwhelming, hard to navigate, it creates a friction that didn't exist a moment earlier. So structure, navigation, scannability, visuals, they all now influence kind of page performance as much as the words themselves. This is especially important in a world where content is constantly summarized and extracted. Now, when we combine all of these shifts together, patterns start to emerge, and these patterns become the trends that I expect will define SEO content in 2026, and they're the ones that your business needs to follow to remain competitive. So let's have a look at them. The first major trend is the rise of evergreen intelligence hubs. Now, at a service level, this could sound like a bit of a rebrand of topic clusters, but it's actually more of a structural evolution of that idea. Traditional topic clusters were designed around pages and internal links, but evergreen intelligence hubs are designed around passage-based ranking, which is how LLM's AI-powered search actually works. The goal of this intelligence hub isn't to rank for one query or a series of queries, it's to own an entire intent space. Now, that means anticipating the full range of questions, refinements, comparisons, and objections that a user might have related to a topic and structuring them into one coherent evergreen asset. Each section is written to stand on its own, but also makes sense as part of a wider whole. And that's what allows AIs to extract, reuse, and cite individual passages without losing the context and meaning at the heart. And the reason this model works so well in 2026 is because it's built for this retrieval, extraction, and long-term use model that we know is so widespread. So instead of publishing dozens of overlapping articles, you invest in fewer, deeper assets that compound in value over time. These hubs become not just kind of online destinations; they become reference points. They support SEO, they support AI visibility, they reinforce UX and brand authority all at the same time. And they reflect the broader shift that we've already been talking about: value over volume, fewer, higher quality, more useful assets. The second trend builds directly on these evergreen hubs, and it's about question chain content planning. Now, this reflects the reality that users are no longer asking one question. They're no longer expected to get one answer and just call it a day. They're asking, clarifying, refining, and then choosing. And it's AI that's normalized this behavior. So content needs to be designed to support it. Now, each section in a strong piece of content should answer one step in this decision journey, and you can see this progression here on screen. So we've got questions like, what is this? Is it suitable for my situation? How does it compare to other options? And ultimately, based on what you know about my situation, which option should I choose? And this isn't a case of kind of adding FAQs at the bottom of a page and calling it a day, just to target some longer tail keywords. It's about intentionally structuring entire assets around this progressive model of understanding, around kind of successive qualification and proactive objection handling as well. These sections must work independently because that's how AI systems extract them in isolation, but they also need to work together to move the user forward when they're actually on the page. Because when content mirrors how people think, it performs better everywhere. And this kind of shifts content strategy from a question of, okay, what should we publish, to a question of what does our user need to understand next if we're to win in search moments that matter to our business. The third trend is entity-driven visibility. Now, entities, as we've said, are brands, products, services, locations, and other clearly defined concepts. They're the building blocks AI systems use to understand the world, not keywords. Now, one way that we can think about this, that we can visualize it, is through something called semantic triples. Semantic triples are kind of a way of structuring data. Within these, you have a subject, a predicate, which is the relationship, and then an object. So brand X provides service Y, or service Y solves problem Z. The example here is Jet2, which is the subject, provides, which is the predicate, package holidays, which is the object. And structuring sentences in this way helps machines understand meaning and relationships at scale. Entity visibility improves when these relationships are explicit and consistently reinforced. And that means really clearly stating what you are as a business, what you offer, who it's for, and how it compares. Not once, but structurally, consistently across content. And these strong entity associations, these real kind of coherent, robust relationships are what unlock high impact visibility in this new era of search. It's the difference between being indexed and being referenced. Because when AI systems when they're confident about who you are, they reuse your content, they cite your brand, and they service you across multiple environments, not just in traditional SERPs. And in practice, this entity-led approach, entity-led architecture almost shifts content strategies from how many pages do we have on this topic to how clearly do we own and reinforce this area of expertise at sentence level. The fourth trend is one of execution, and it's where content strategy meets engineering, because generative AI has fundamentally changed the economics of execution. Speed is no longer a competitive advantage because everybody has it. I'm pretty sure with 30 minutes of instruction, my nan could even write 1,000 words of half decent content on a given topic. Content engineering then is about building repeatable systems that protect quality while enabling scale across a team. And businesses that use this approach see 73% faster production and 62% better brand consistency, not because they're rushing, but because the structure and intent are defined before the writing even begins. Because the real value of approaching content from an engineering standpoint is what it frees up. When you reduce the manual lifting, whether that's briefing, formatting, QA, duplication, you create time, you create resource for original thinking, for unique insights, and for continued optimization. If AI helps you get good faster, engineering is what gets you from good to great consistently. And in a world where good is more accessible than ever, great needs to be the baseline if you want to succeed and compete. Now, trend 5, something that we touched on already, is the convergence of SEO and PR. Now, it's important to say really clearly that SEO and PR are not totally separate disciplines. I know that they're already well integrated across many brands, but because digital PR has been a really core part of building EEAT profiles and broader credibility for years and years. What's changed with the advent of AI is the weight that those signals now carry. AI-powered search systems place an even greater emphasis on third-party validation. So own signals like on-site content, structure, optimization, etc., these are still essential, but earned signals, so media coverage, expert commentary, independent, respected citations, these all now play a much bigger role in determining whether content is trusted enough to be surfaced or cited. And this convergence we're seeing isn't about merging teams for the sake of it. It's about alignment, kind of real close, focused alignment on who a brand is, what it's known for, and whether independent sources reinforce that narrative clearly. Because in a search landscape that's now mediated by AI so much, credibility is more than a ranking factor. It's almost the gateway. It's almost the enabler to sustained, impactful visibility. Now, theory means absolutely nothing if you don't act on it. So knowing that we need to reduce cognitive load, knowing that we need to kind of curate conversational, personalized experiences, and being aware that, focusing on building entity authority at the brand level, this is all great, but how do we actually put this awareness into practice? So over the next few slides, this is exactly what I'm going to explain. We're going to look at changes that we've discussed through a lens of practicality, thinking about things in terms of bottom line impact and exploring exactly what needs to happen to capitalize on the opportunities, the challenges, but also opportunities that 2026 presents for businesses that are truly focused on growth. So step one, the first step to any 2026 content roadmap is changing how you audit success. While traditional SEO audits tend to focus on things that were historically very logical, so where pages rank, how much traffic they get, and what kind of click-through rates from SERPs look like, this is no longer sufficient. Now, the problem isn't that these metrics are wrong in themselves, it's just that they're incomplete in today's search environment. Rankings tell us where something appears, but not whether it actually influences a decision that we care about. Traffic tells us that somebody arrived, but not what they understood, trusted, or did next. And click-through rate assumes that a click equals a success, which simply isn't true when answers are increasingly surfaced before that click can even happen. Visibility audits, then, they ask different questions. Instead of asking, where do we rank? We ask, where and how do we show up across modern search journeys? That includes whether your content is surfaced or cited in AI, and where it appears in generative answers. We're asking which sections shape understanding, not just which pages appear in search results. And kind of we're asking how our brand and how our key entities show up across this fragmented discovery path. So Google, AI overviews, LLMs, media, forums, social platforms. Where, how, and why are we visible across all of these spaces? Now, the goal here isn't to abandon rankings entirely. It's to understand visibility more holistically in the same way that users now experience it. And once you understand where and how you're visible, the next step is getting clarity on that. You need to be explicit about what you want to be known for. That includes your brand, your products or services, and your areas of expertise. Now, this might sound obvious, but in practice, kind of, it's quite easy to try and be visible for too many things at once. And when that happens, entity signals can get diluted, both for users, both for audiences, and for AI systems. So this step is about making more intentional choices and not just following the opportunities that keyword research presents. Because if you don't define these things deliberately, if you don't really clearly define what the entities that matter for your business, what you want to be known for, then search will infer it for you and it can get it wrong. Because clarity on entities isn't enough on its own. You also need to make the relationships between them explicit, going back to what we were thinking about on the semantic triples. And this involves really clearly communicating what you offer, who it's for, and how it compares to alternatives. And crucially, these relationships, they can't be implied or buried. They need to be stated clearly, consistently, and structurally within all of your content, because this is what allows AI systems to confidently understand how your brand fits into a wider landscape. It's the same principle that we spoke about earlier, just applied practically. And the final piece in this kind of entity definition is reinforcement, because defining entities once isn't enough. They need to be reinforced consistently and structurally. So that means across pages, across formats, and in external mentions as well. Because strong entity signals, the signals that we're trying to build, come from repetition with intent. When the same core entities, when the same relationships appear on site, in media coverage, and across authoritative sources, AI systems gain confidence, and that confidence allows visibility to scale as a result. Step 3 is where we can often feel the most tension, because it asks us to pause before creating anything new. The principle here is one that's running through this session: value over volume. More content does not equal better content, and in an AI-mediated search environment, it often means the opposite. Every additional page that we publish on a site competes for attention, clarity, authority, both with competitors and kind of with your own site itself. So this step is about holding back, about resisting the urge to publish by default and creating content that adds genuine value for an audience, not just because it's habitual. If step two was about creating clarity, then this step really is about protecting that. We need to be identifying where existing content is working and where it's working against us. If we have things like overlap, dilution, cannibalization, so where kind of topics or entities are spread too thinly, where pages are competing for the same visibility, it's not malicious, it's not intentional, it's a natural byproduct of years of keyword-led content planning. But this kind of fragmentation, this symptom weakens user understanding and AI confidence. So this is where teams need to be disciplined. New content should only be created where genuine gaps exist for your target audience, not where kind of keyword tools suggest that there is a content gap, not where competitors have a page, but where your users actually lack information, reassurance, or clarity at a meaningful point in their decision journey. This consolidation isn't necessarily about doing less work. It's about doing work that compounds in favor of your business's goals, rather than cancelling itself out through duplication. Step four comes back to the issues of UX that we were talking about. So redesigning priority pages, not just rewriting them. And one of the biggest mistakes teams make is actually starting with the copy. Instead, what we need to do is map the full decision journey on the page before a single word is written. So asking kind of critical questions like, what does somebody need to understand here? What questions will they naturally have next? And what doubts or objections do I need to address to keep them on the page? And this is how pages stop being almost static documents and start functioning as the experiences, the brand, the product experiences that we want them to. When writing comes after thinking, not before it. Because once this journey is mapped, we can move on to the next step, which is modular design. Priority pages should be built from self-sufficient sections, each with a clear job to do. Now, that job might be education, it might be comparison, it might be reassurance, it might be enabling a conversion. But each section should kind of make sense on its own, because as we know, that's how AI systems and users kind of encounter them in isolation due to passage-based ranking. But they also need to work together as part of this cohesive whole to neaten up, to close the boundaries on the experience we're trying to design. And this is what makes content usable, scannable, and extractable. Really, this kind of the step in this step in the roadmap is about taking the principles of passage-based ranking that we know and applying them to page design practically. The final piece in this is reducing friction, because great content will still fail if it's hard to navigate or mentally taxing to consume. Now, structure, UX matter arguably as much as the words on the page themselves. So leveraging things like clear visual hierarchies, intuitive navigation, strong scannability, these all reduce cognitive load. They all make it easier for users and AI to understand what matters most about a topic. And in 2026, excellent UX cannot be separate from SEO, because it's a core part of how visibility isn't just earned, but retained over time. Now, by this point, a lot of teams probably reach the same conclusion this all sounds great, but how do we actually deliver it consistently? Because there's a lot to work with here. Now, the answer is systems. To implement repeatable, scalable content systems that reduce manual input, you need to kind of don your engineer hat. You need to adopt an engineering mindset. Now, we've already kind of mentioned that AI has changed the economics of content creation, because anybody can produce something half decent very quickly now. So the real advantage comes from designing how content is built, how it's reviewed, and how it evolves over time, all before it's written. Now, one crucial thing to remember here is that this isn't about removing or reducing creativity. The goal is actually to protect that. To do this in practice, it means that content engineers, people who are approaching content production with an engineering state of mind, need to be defining the things that shouldn't be reinvented every single time a piece is created. For example, page structure templates that reflect decision journeys, section libraries for common needs like comparisons or kind of FAQs or objections. Really clear brand and tone of voice rules that can be used with a wider team and fed into AI tools as training data. Team-wide agreed scope for repurposing content across formats, and kind of semi-automated QA to catch predefined issues early without the need for heavy manual input. Now, when these systems are in place, when these approaches are in place, what happens is teams spend less time on setup and cleanup, as it were, and more time on what they do best, offering insight, finding those gems of originality, and giving the time that's needed to high impact optimization. And really, this is how we scale without sacrificing quality. By this stage in the roadmap, you should be very clear on the entities that matter to your brand. So step 6 is about implementing tactics, finding ways to pressure test those entities really outside of your own site. Because external validation is how you confirm what you say about yourself holds up in the real world. So media coverage, expert contributions, partner mentions, authoritative third-party sites, these all act as almost corroboration layers. They help answer the simple question AI systems constantly ask: is this claim supported elsewhere? Can I verify this? Now, this step isn't about chasing coverage for the sake of it. It's a step to reinforce the specific entities and expertise that you want your business to be trusted for. Because what AIs value most is verifiability, which means the consistent mentions of the same entities framed in the same way across multiple independent sources, citations that support claims, expert commentary that aligns with on-site messaging, repetition across sources but from outside of your organization. And this is where weaker strategies fall down. If external mentions are scattered, generic, contradictory, then they don't actually reinforce the trust we're trying to build. They can, in fact, dilute it. The strong validation, the strong credibility that we want to achieve comes from consistency, first and foremost. The final layer of this is evidence. Now, in 2026, we know, kind of given how LLMs operate, we know that unsupported claims are increasingly ignored, even if they're written in the most beautiful way you've ever seen. They can be ignored. AI saver content that can be backed up with independent data, original research, or kind of real world usage experience. Now, that might mean proprietary data sets, surveys, benchmarking studies, or kind of cited third party research on your site. Now, it doesn't mean that evidence needs to be everywhere, but the most important claims, the ones that hold the most value for a business, should be defensible and provable in this way. Because when we have validation, when we have consistency, and when this evidence all lines up, this credibility becomes durable, and that leads to sustained visibility across time and across discovery channels as well. The final step in all of this is about measurement, and this is one of the most important mindset shifts of all, because success isn't defined by activity. It's not defined by publishing more pages, targeting more keywords, or building more links. These things don't automatically mean that a team is being effective, and it's something that we absolutely don't believe in here at Digital Loft. Those metrics, they're things that tell you what you did. They don't tell you whether it actually mattered. And in the world of AI, it's entirely possible to be very busy, but still very, very invisible. And that's why associating reporting with outputs gives a false sense of progress, because busy is not the same as effective. What matters is the outcomes of kind of the effort that you're putting in. The outcomes being, are you gaining visibility across the environments that influence decisions? Is your content contributing to real business goals, revenue, leads, consideration, trust, whatever they are for your brand? And is it shaping how users understand and choose between options? So a practical way to do this, a way that I like to think about it, is to assign an ideal outcome to every output. Not, we're going to publish 10 pages on this, but this page exists to educate, or this resource exists to convert. Because when the outcomes are clear, when the outcomes are measurable, performance becomes easier to track, and strategy becomes easier to refine on an ongoing basis. And when we look back at the kind of these 7 steps in this roadmap as a whole, something that's really clear is that none of this is actually about producing more content. It's not necessarily not about that, but fundamentally, it's not about more. It's about producing content that earns visibility, trust, and relevance consistently. So I'll leave you with this. The teams that win in 2026 won't necessarily be the ones producing the most content. They'll be the ones that understand exactly what great content looks like, what matters to business bottom lines, and how they're going to deliver against both of these things consistently. Thank you very much for listening. Do we have any questions? Let me try and find the Q&A section. We do have one question, actually. How would you recommend creating this longer form, helpful content without just creating big guide to style content? Thank you very much for that question. So I guess my first reaction to that is to avoid creating guide to style content. Now, I guess a lot of informational content is in a way a guide, but what we can do is we can break it up by information that we have about target audiences. So we need to be doing really keen research into exactly who we're targeting, who our product or service is aimed at, and then crafting content around that. We can create modular sections within a bigger kind of longer form hub that are tailored to individual users that answer their questions directly. We can do research not just on SEMrush, but on Reddit. We can dive into the spaces that we know our target audience is actually spending time in, asking questions that they can't find answers to elsewhere, and extract the questions that we can see them seeking answers to, and incorporate those into longer form content to kind of break it up, but keep it as part of a bigger, more holistic story. My advice would be to implement things like that, implement more kind of interactive jump to sections that split the content out into more defined sections that users can either consume as a whole, but also jump between using kind of jump to links, menus, etc., so that it becomes more of a digital experience rather than just a page of words. If you there's no name attached to that, but if you want to kind of send me a message on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to chat to you more on that as well after this session. Let me see. I hope we've got another question. Let me have a look. So I work for a brand that sells almost everything. Department store vibes. Very exciting. Do you care to share what that brand might be? How can I define entities? So brands, products, and expertise. Thank you very much for that question. The way that you will do that is by simply following the same semantic triples approach. It goes right back down to the word structures themselves. So defining what those brands and products are, and then crafting content that explains those relationships between the objects and the subjects really, really transparently. And and obviously, using kind of the sentence structures that we went through on the slides earlier. So using the subject, the predicate, and the object. For example, let's say that you work in a department store that has a footwear department. You could say the brand being Nike, the relationship being provides, and the kind of the object, the kind of the other entity that we're trying to associate with Nike being high quality running shoes. You would phrase the content to say Nike provides the highest quality running shoes. It seems almost foundational. It seems too easy, but getting it right back to basics and framing and structuring sentences in this way is the best approach to building these really strong, clear entities and defining them appropriately. Even if you do have a massive set of different entities, as they were in a department store. Let me have a look. We have a comment from Joe. Thank you, Joe. We are a large B2B e-commerce company in a very niche industry with lots of products we're trying to update. Search volume is low, and we have a commercial focus. How would you recommend targeting content to produce versus consolidating? My recommendation, Joe, would be always start with consolidating. Now, if search volumes are low, you can do this through a lens of audience research, kind of leaning on any targeting, any ICP assets that you have, any buyer persona assets that you have, any historical purchase information or sales data that you have on how things have worked historically, and trying to fit the content that you have around what you understand those patterns to be. Mapping kind of full funnel content roadmaps from awareness to conversion, kind of speaking with the sales, speaking with the customer success teams, figuring out how people typically engage up to the point of purchase with the products that you're providing. And then mapping the content that you have against that journey, figuring out what people need to know, what people should understand across that journey. And then that will show you where the gaps exist. You might need to consolidate some of your existing content to kind of avoid repetition. It's something that we see across 99.99% of websites. There's almost always some kind of form of overlap. But my advice would be to approaching kind of content and deciding what to produce. If you don't have the kind of really kind of clear guide of keyword volumes, and there aren't necessarily there isn't that kind of general or widespread awareness and interest in the products that you are providing, then using the historical data, creating the really kind of in-depth customer profiling assets, so that you can predict what these behaviors, what these expectations, what these needs are, and mapping your existing content against that model. And then that will also show you, okay, where are the gaps? Where is there going to be a misstep between somebody arriving at asset A and then not being able to get to asset C because asset B doesn't exist yet? That would be my advice. Thank you very much for your question. I don't think we've got any more time for any questions. If any, you're very welcome, Joe. If anybody does have any more questions, I think there was maybe a couple more that I didn't get a chance to ask. If anybody has any more questions, absolutely. Add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat about content. My team would probably like me to be talking about content less, because it is something that I want to die on a hill for. and have done for the last 10 years. So please add me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to start a conversation on content and chat about things that are of interest or an issue in your professional circles right now. The final thing that I have to say is that the Digital PR Summit is back. It's back, it's bigger, it's better than ever. And it's in Manchester on the 22nd of April of this year. We've just released the first wave of speakers this week, and there are so many more incredible names yet to be announced. If you fancy coming along, it'd be great to see you. If you want to know more about it, there's a QR code there on the screen that you can scan for more info, for tickets, for information, sneak peeks about the events. Last year's, I had the pleasure of hosting one of the stages last year, and it was an amazing day. So many great speakers, and having eyes on the prep that's going into this year's event only makes me even more excited for this year's event. So speak to your boss, tell them that it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread, because it is. And I hope to see loads of people there in April later this year. Feels like we're so close now. And I cannot wait. So with that, thank you so much for joining. I hope you found this session helpful. I hope it's given you things to think about, things to action. If you have any follow-up questions, drop me a message on LinkedIn. The team will be kind of following up to everybody after this session with a recording and with some key takeaways as well. So watch your email inbox for that. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. And thank you very much for listening.